Hi developers, subscribers and friends. Do you know AWS Amplify? Maybe it's time to see it in action and explore its features, advantages, disadvantages, as it could be a new low-code platform you want to use in future to build front-end or mobile app. If not, check also other videos on my channel. AWS is currently recommending Amplify on their conferences, but as well from their AWS SA teams to clients, so it seems like a good time now to see why. If you want to check some official intro, check the link into the description from the recent conference, and as well other links which I will be using in the video. What I want to show is step-by-step guide, also with a lot of details which you usually don't find in other videos, and also a bit of theory on the beginning, and of course a lot of recommendations or thoughts. So let's get straight to the topic. What I want to build with Amplify? It would be a simple application for food giveaway where the user can create a new food item to give away, and of course anybody else can then see the food and apply for it. This will be not a full-blown application, but I want to show some important concepts and features, but maybe this will be a good start for somebody who is planning to create similar application, so you can as well take inspiration from this. And some theory. So per AWS, or per their definition, what they say is that AWS Amplify is a complete solution that lets front-end web and mobile developers easily build, ship and host full-stack applications on the AWS with the flexibility to leverage the breadth of AWS services and as use case evolve. No cloud experience needed. Okay, I don't fully agree with this statement, but maybe partially it is more or less true. So what else we should mention is it's a lot of features which Amplify offers. So for example, and of course, list of all of the features and stuff can vary because this video was recorded in December 2022, and Amplify is still evolving quite heavily, I would say. So maybe the list will change. But what is important is that it's a UI platform for developers. They have a Amplify Studio as well. Obviously not only Amplify Studio where you can do all of the stuff by using the mouse and interactively, but you can use a command line interface. The most important as well for the Amplify team is not that just you can play around with the front end, but you can host it. So what they offer is a hosting where they leverage their products like S3, CD and DNS and so on, and as well the full deployment pipeline, and as well the provisioning with CloudFormation and CI/CD pipeline. So other than that, there is a set of OSS library for Amplify UI components, also important that they have a native integration, support for authentication, and a lot of features like data store, analytics, API function, geo, interactions, prediction, messages, push notification, storage, concept of override customization of the defaults when generating stuff, and new kit in the block forms. Maybe as well why I basically did wanted to try Amplify myself is because I did play with Amplify 2 years ago, but that was not on this current level what you see or what you will see in this video, but was not so rich, yeah, I would say. And as well, I did study for the AWS Cloud Practitioner Foundational exam, then I was trying to do the Solution Architect exam, and one of the products which they mentioned was Amplify, so I wanted to try this because it was very interested. I also did some course on Udemy for this, so I was, keen to see really how far I can get with Amplify. So this was also a reason why. Okay, and enough of the theory. So let's begin to build some stuff. And we will not begin with the backend or database, but we will begin with the UX design first, because what Amplify promises is that if you build the UX design, then you can generate a lot of code, and it would be a pixel perfect design. At least they claim that it will work like this. So let's start with Figma. So what is a Figma? Figma is a UX design tool. So let's navigate to figma.com, and if you don't have an account, you can create one. I already have, so I will continue with the login. And after you are logged into the Figma, you should see something like that. What we need to use is original Amplify Studio UI kit, which we would clone. So if you didn't work with that, I already had, so you can search for Amplify UI kit and go for the community ones. There will be a lot of one, but pick the one which is from AWS Amplify, click on it, and there will be get a copy. So click again on the get a copy, and that should open a copy for you. And what I recommend is to rename this copy so you know that is the one which we are currently working on. And let's say it's Figma for developers. And it's good as well to check what is inside this Figma design. So as you see here in the README file, it's how to use this this file basically. So if you zoom in, you should see it better. So basically here Amplify team is guiding you how to use this file. So they're saying they have primitives, my components examples, and obviously you can create your own components. We will show maybe later on how. They also are speaking about some concept like what is the frame, how to use the primitives, what is auto layout and stuff like this. And then how you can use your theme, that you should install the AWS Amplify theme editor, which we will do. And then what you should do to synchronize the Amplify design with the UI Studio. So first do the theming, let's install the plugin. So go to the menu, click on the plugins and install the Amplify theme editor by using find the plugin and type Amplify. There should not be a lot of plugins, and then you can configure with this plugin your whole theme. So for example, changing the colors, changing the breakpoints and so on. If you are done, click update, and that's it. That's all what you need to do. So as said, there is a set of README file primitives, components, and examples. So primitives, if we go there, you should see something like that. And there are a bunch of primitives. You would not find all of the ones which you expect there, but Let's say there are standard ones like buttons, cards, fields, headings, and so on, as you see. Then there are my components, and those are pre-built components by the AWS Amplify team. So they have components for some layouts, for some post components, for the navigation, for the footer, and so on and so on. Some of them maybe we will use. And then there are some examples. And basically those examples are examples how they are bringing all of these components together. So this looks like this then. Yeah, you can check yourself. And that is enough for the intro, I think. And we can start crafting our own components, which will be used to design our application for our use case, which will be a food app. So if we look at the components, pre-built components which I offer, maybe we can reuse some of them. So almost each of the design or a simple web page should have a kind of a header or navigation, footer, and then something in between. So something in between could be a banner, or they call it a layout, or some features, or whatever, yeah? In our case, we would maybe display either a list of foods in some way, maybe we will have some form for the foods and so on. So let's get into this, and we will obviously also clean some components which we don't need. So let's try to find if there is some navigation bar. Yes, it is. And let's move it somewhere into the right. So here we have a navigation bar. There is a marketing footer, which we also would like to have. And maybe we would like to display some kind of a banner. So let's pick their layout. And maybe as well, let's pick something which would be used for the food. So there is a form checkout, but it is not what we really wanted. We will not do all the stuff which is there, but I see quite a good fit, or what we can reuse is a profile card and edit profile, because this looks like a form which we will need, and a profile card is something for the read-only mode. So let's move this into our total page, and if we as well pick the profile card, that is something which, when we put a couple of profiles, and it would be a food, yeah, imagine this would be a food, you would have like 3 or multiple foods there. So you could copy paste this and you would see how it would look like on the page then. And what else we can do? We can, I think, clean up the rest, because as I said, I will not do a full demo with all of the stuff, but we will just show the principles and maybe, design this as a beginning. So for example, we don't need this, and you can obviously select that and delete it one by one, or from this menu, it's up to you. Yeah. So if we do some kind of a cleanup, we will have a bigger screen to play around with that, and I think that makes sense. What we will also do is we will rename it. Yeah, so navbar is fine, the naming for the component, and the difference between a frame and a component is this special icon here. So header layout, let's call it a banner. profile card, let's change it to food cart. And edit profile, change it to like edit food, and marketing footer is a footer. So that is just for the purpose of the how does this should look like roughly. Yeah. Okay, and now let's focus on the navbar, for example. So let's zoom in, and for the navbar we have some kind of logo on the left, we have a some kind of links on the right, we have a search, we have a bell icon, and some icon of the login user. So what we will do is we will change the logo, because most probably we have a different one. And for the links, maybe let's just add one button which will be like there for add new food. And we can clean components which will be not used, like we will not use we will not use some of the search field functionality, and let's just keep the image which will be there just to display the user which is looking. So set from these links, we could delete those ones, and maybe let's rather use the button. So how to do that? You can drag and drop this from primitives, or you can type button and insert the button here from components, of course. And because we don't like that it's called default button, we can rename already the content to add food. Yeah. Let's delete then the rest, because there will be currently only one button. And let's change the type of the button on the right from like default is fine, and variation to link. As said, we want to also change the logo. So if we click on the logo, we see that it's again some kind of a frame, but let's add our own image. So the logo is quite big, so let's first scale it down by using scale, and here you can modify it so it fits the width and height which we need. And now let's put it there. What we could do is we could just delete the rest, and for better naming convention, it's better to fix the generated names, and if it's logo, then it's logo. If this frame is links, then it's links, or navigation, or whatever you want. Yeah. And on the right side we have again a frame which is basically a user. Let's keep it as user then. And now we have a navbar. So with what we can continue is the banner which will be displayed, and we can obviously change it as well. So we could add some better image. Looks quite good. So then let's remove the original image. Let's just keep ours. What we can, or we should change is all the stuff which is written there, if we need it or doesn't need it. So let's change some of the text, or we can use the button to add new food as well. And we can obviously change some text here. And we can delete the stuff which we don't need. And obviously we could put some text, but you know, I don't know what to put right now. So let me just delete the stuff which I don't need. Something like that. Maybe let's make the font bigger. For this, it could be more visible, and so on. We could play around a longer time. I think it seems that there is some kind of overlay right now here. Maybe here. This one. So that looks much better, but still it corrupted a bit our font. So let's change the color to the one which we think it would be much more visible. Maybe black. No. Yeah, you would need to play, but it doesn't matter right now. I just wanted to show you some stuff which you can do. So we have a banner then, which would be displayed under the navigation menu, and what we can customize now is the cards which will be displayed, and they will display a very simple view on the food. So obviously then the picture will be displayed somehow, maybe some like name, maybe some small description, maybe a number of items, and you could also view details, so that would be modified by us. So let's start with that. The image, that we can modify to some food item. And let's say that the food item is a banana. Place a banana here. And again, we need to scale it. So let's go to the scaling mode and make the banana a bit smaller so it fits our frames. Let's say something like that. And basically we want to place it in the food component. So we can also use the left side. Move the banana here. Oops, something got wrong. No. And let's call it really image, because we will change the image obviously then later on. And the original banana, we can delete it. So we have an image for the food. Then obviously we would have some kind of title and maybe small description, and most probably quantity. So let's change it to title and description, and let's also change the followers to quantity, or let's see if there is some primitive which we can use. So the rating is not the good fit, so I think we need to use the quantity. And the button which is there, we will rename it as view details. That makes sense, right? As you see, because we are cloning the components, all of the others are then cloned. Yeah, we can also change the default values. For example, for the description, very good bananas, and title banana, and for the quantity text you can place something like that. Yeah, and that's our design of the food cart, which will be displayed there multiple times. Yeah. Obviously, we also need to design some form where we will enter the data, and as well a footer. So footer is very simple. We would maybe just place something like copyright, or I don't know, some stuff like that. So if we open the footer, there's plenty of information which we don't need. Yeah, so we can delete most of that stuff and making the footer a bit smaller, most probably, and it would be easier for us then to handle. We can try it with this. Maybe the footer with 100 is more than enough, and we can change the copyright, yeah, or whatever text we want to have here. And the text on the left could be, some info. So let's put our copyright here. By Stefan, something like that. And then some information into the footer, could be a version of this or whatever information you like. So for example, please support us and donate food. Yeah, whatever we put there. So that is done, and we can now focus on the edit profile, which is the most difficult one from the design point of view. So now let's continue with the form, which will be used to add a new food item. So let's change the header first, because it seems that we can do better. And the name could be like add food. And obviously we will also use some functionality to upload a new image. So that is something which we would like to have. Upload new image is great. The image picture could be different, so let's add our banana there. Because banana is something which we already have here. So we can either duplicate it with copy paste or D, and we can add it instead of the current picture, which is here, and I'm not sure where is it right now. It's here. So let's drag it under this and put it into the profile. You see it's quite big, but it doesn't matter. Let's delete the original one. Upload new image is great, yeah. And now let's play around a bit with the other items in the form. So what we will definitely have is some kind of a title. So the name is not correct as a field. We need to change it as title. Then the next one would be some kind of a description, obviously. And the next one, maybe we will use the quantity. What else we want to have is the maybe the pickup times, yeah, when the user will be available. That's as well good to define this in the design. And what we can do is maybe we can go into the fields and duplicate them as well. So the next one would be pickup time. And what else we would like to have is location. Would make sense, I think, or and let's maybe shift this a bit. And so the last one I said is location, but that would be most probably a map. So we could put a placeholder for the map, and then later on it would leverage the AWS service. So that would be not a field, but we could say that it's frame, and then we will convert this into the slot, which is a component wrapper in Amplify. So let's delete this and put maybe standard text, which would be location. But as well, let's add there a frame. And that frame would stand for really for our map. So we can also check how many components we have right now. The naming is not so good, yeah. So maybe we should group those two together. By using the auto layout. And basically if we select them both and add to auto layout, now they are auto layout and grouped together. So what we can change as well is the naming of the fields, because they are just text field. It doesn't like this. So let's say that's a title field. That one is a description field. So I'm also showing you some best practices. Quantity field and pickup field, and that one is location frame. We can obviously also change the default values, which is something strange right now, so it would be good if we change it. So the title, I don't know, name of the food, item, description of the food, number of items for giveaway, and then usual times for pickup, and stuff like this. And now we have some decent art food form. So let's bring it together somehow. And it looks like this. We have a navbar, we have a banner, we have a cart, we have edit food, and we have a footer. What we don't have right now is the view detail. Yeah, so maybe we should also define the view detail. And I was doing some special cut, and to speed things up, I was a bit modifying the design to make it more fancy, nicely. So I was aligning the stuff a bit and so on, and I created the food detail from some Amplify UI kit template for some detail component, where I obviously added only a read-only view, but it has the same components as edit food. So some small tweakings were done on the background to align this and so on. Now I would like to speak about some best practices or things which you should consider. And for example, the first one is you should never update or delete primitives. Yeah? Otherwise, the whole design and the synchronization with the AWS Amplify will fail. Then maybe use a grid layout, which you can enable in the view mode. So it's here on this right side, and you can basically say how the grid layout would look like in a way that you can modify this, in the column grid. For example, you want to have 12 columns, which is more or less standard, and stuff like this. Yeah. So this is for the small component which doesn't make sense. Yeah. So let's remove this, but imagine that we would have a whole page here. We would like to enable the full grid. For example, like this was in these kind of examples where they have a grid layout enabled. So basically they need to have some component under this. And it is then good to position the components. When you are building responsive design, then most probably for some of the components like navbar, usually, when you want to design a really responsive component, then you can do the responsiveness until some width. And obviously you can use stemming and breakpoints and so on. But for example, if we have this kind of a menu, usually then the menu will translate into the left menu after some small width, yeah? And therefore, for example, you would like to create a variant. And to create a variant, it's quite easy. On the component, you basically would use add variant, and you should name it variant, for example, small or a medium or whatever. Yeah, you can find this in the theme if you open the plugin, and then you can play around with variants. Of course, there are some limitations, like both or three variants or whatever variants you use needs to have the same naming, same tree, and so on. And obviously for responsive design, you need to play around with auto layout and configuration of the grid itself or frames. So except of the AWS Amplify, there are also some other tools or plugins which you can use to generate the code. So for example, you can install them from the community and install them into the plugins, and basically then you can use those plugins to generate the HTML or React code, for example, Anima Builder and so on. Yeah, that's also possible. And how they do that, usually they parse the Figma template, but as well, if you check the right side, you would see a prototype and as well inspect, and inspect is basically showing you the CSS code, and you can see what what elements are there if you want to inspect the code in some way. Yeah, for whatever you would see then the CSS code for element which you which you inspect, which is also handy. Yeah? So you see how it is generated then later on. And that's all for this section. Now we will continue with AWS Cloud and Amplify. So let's continue with the AWS. If you navigate to the Amazon and use the link from the description for the free tier, you should be able to create a new account for free, and you get some credits on the services, and it's described on this page, so I will not go into details because this can change, obviously. I already have the account, so I will skip this, but just continue with that one. And I will just sign in into my account, and after the sign in, you should see something like that or similar. And what we are interested in is AWS Amplify, so you either search for it or go to the services, or if you recently use it, you can click on AWS Amplify. So let's click there, and there is a getting started guide, so you can watch, you can learn from there, but let's start really with get started, because we need to start it here, and let's call our application giveaway. And under the hood, Amplify will spin up some services like CloudFormation, and they will provision a new environment for us, which is great. So you need to be patient and wait a bit. And voila, the environment is up. What we can do to really start up is to launch the studio. So if you click on Launch Studio, it should open a new URL with the cloud instance of the Amplify Studio. So, and you can start with the data model, or you can start with the UI part. And because we already developed our Figma template, so let's start with the UI part and going to design UI library. And now we need to sync with Figma. So let's click on the sync with Figma, and we need to provide a URL from Figma. So let's copy paste, enter here, and click continue. Now it should fetch all of the changes from Figma. It would show us what changes we want to accept and what not. Yeah. So we could view it, but let's accept all. And now for all of the components, again, I can accept, reject changes, and let's accept all. And now it imported all our components, so we could double check how does this look like. If we are missing the icons, we can, of course, modify that, yeah, and this UI designer is there to configure the components, which is great. So for example, let's start on the navbar. If we click on the configure and we see that something is missing, we can set the image source for this. But we can also do this later. So everything was synchronized in our UI library. And obviously we would configure the security, we would configure the data model and so on. But just to show, then the next step would be for us to configure the local environment and start really with Amplify. And how to do that? Yeah, we can follow some official guides, or we can click on Get Component Code, and initial project setup should guide us how to do that. So let's open IDEA, and let's also do the project creation in IDEA. So let's use the classical library which will generate the code for React application. So let's use npx create React app my app, which is a generator to create a skeleton for the React app. Let's wait a bit. So when we look at the project, it has some generated code, which looks nice. And let's then continue with the guide, which will tell us what to do next. And next one, we should install the CLI. Next one, we should install UI React. And then we should copy paste this example into the index.js. So let's open the source code, navigate to index.js, and basically copy paste this here, which will import dependencies and configure the Amplify. Then it's recommended that we wrap the app into the theme provider. Let's do this. I don't know, we can format the code if you want. Really initialize the whole project by using the Amplify pool. So let's do that. And let's pull all the changes from Amplify, all the generated code. By using the command, it should ask us first time for the authentication. Authenticate, you should accept. And then return. And it should ask you some questions. So choose the editor, framework, and so on. And then the code generator will spin up and generate some codes for you. Answer yes, of course. And now we should see that there is some stuff generated in the Amplify folder and in the UI components. All our components should be right now here. So if we go back to the browser, we should see the example for the navbar which we created. So let's copy paste the imports for the navbar. Let's go to the app.js. Let's add it there. And as well, let's copy paste the component. And we don't need all of this crap. So let's just paste the navbar there. And let's spin up the npm start. In the second terminal, let's keep this one for the synchronization. And let's see what happens. Okay, so we have the navbar, but it doesn't look right, yeah? So for example, the program is the width of the navbar is not correct and the images are not there. So you can configure the images in the navbar if you configure that via the UI. And basically, if you click on the image, you can set the value for that, but for that you need to use the full URL, so from some static CDN. But I don't want to use that. I want to customize my images and use it from my project. Therefore, I would go to the code, and first of all, because I have the React application, I would upload the images into the public folder. So for example, all of the images which I'm using, like a logo, banner, and so on, I would upload this here and then reference it from the application. So I updated this and added some logo, banner, banana, unknown user. And for the navbar, I need the unknown user, which is a user on the right, and the logo. So how to do that is, there's a concept of overrides. So each of the Amplify UI components has override feature or overrides. and you can provide the overrides directly, or best practice is, if you have more, to create a constant like navbar overrides, and then specifying those overrides. You of course need to know which component is being overridden, and if we go to the UI, in the navbar we have the logo that we want, and the user image we as well want to override. And the names are important. So for example, here is the logo, second one is the image. So then it would mean that here I would specify this element, which is logo, and again I would like to override some properties of that. Most probably I would like to override the source, and the source could be in the form of string or some reference, and in this case it's a string reference. Let's try if that works. Great, that works as well. Let's update the user, and the user, as we've seen in the UI, has a name image. Then try this. So it's a small image, and the source is then the unknown user. And something like that. Let's check if that worked. Yes, great. It's a bit small, so maybe either we would change the design. Let's check in the design tool how big that image is. And it's 4045. This one is 155, so maybe as well we could make this a bit bigger. I don't know, like 60. And let's synchronize and see if that helps. So syncs with Figma. Let's see the changes. Okay, this looks bigger, accept. Now let's go to the code. And now after recompile, the image got bigger, looks better now. So this is the header, but it doesn't have the proper width. So how to fix it is, we can specify the width here. And we can use 100%. Let's see if that helps. Yeah. Kind of, it looks better. What we can add as well here is obviously the footer, because we created some footer here. Just to check the code, we can go to configure, and we see that the footer name is footer, and footer is the same stuff. So we can add another import for footer, and as well adding the footer is pretty straightforward. And let's check if something is going on. Yes, the footer is here. It is again not in proper width, so let's change this. Other than that, I don't like that it's not stick to the bottom, so let's change that as well. And we need to wrap it into some another component, or using some CSS magic. So for that we prepared two classes, content and footer. Let's apply these classes. class name is then footer, and we will wrap this into the div. With class name, I think it was content. Let's see if that works. Yes, this is down. I have some zoom in right now, so it looks a bit weird, but that is what we wanted. And let's now play a bit with the banner. So if we go to the UI library, the banner is there. What I did in Figma, I was a bit playing around with the banner frame, and I cleaned it up. And basically what stayed is text and a button at the end. So I was applying some bit more styling. Like for example, for the text, I was trying stroke, didn't work. So basically Amplify UI is ignoring this property. FX didn't work, but at least I was inspecting the CSS, and for the FX I know which one. So I will then copy paste this in a special class, CSS class, which we will override the defaults. And other than that, I used a property for the frame, which is, let me show it, which is a fill. So we can fill this with the image, so it's a background image. At least here in Figma. And how to do this? If you click plus, in the fill you can choose solid, but as well image. If you would choose image, you can upload your own image to the Figma design. But Amplify UI is completely ignoring that. Yet it's not paying too much attention. So let's sync it. Should be maybe no changes. And let me show the banner. So completely ignoring the background, and the text of course is white, so we don't see it. But basically, what can we do in this case? We of course can do Amplify pull, but if we spin up the application, it will not show us what we really want. And let's comment out the code which is there to help. So after the pull, we would see something like that for the banner part. Yeah, which is some text and a button, but of course, background image lost, it's not there, and as well, the styling is not as I wanted. So pixel perfect design, yeah, sure, but not for all the properties. So how can we fix that? Fix is pretty much simple. We would use the class name, and we would set that our class, which overrides the defaults, is banner. And in the banner class, I already played around, and I add a background image, which I'm using for my public images, and the cover for better one. And I also use a text shadow, so it should look nicer. And voila, after that, this looks pretty much the same. But of course, as said, some properties are not synchronized from Figma to Amplify, and as a hack you can do something like that. So I wanted to show you how to do that. Then the next component would be obviously a food. So we would create a food cart, a list of food items. But for that we need to go and create as well some data model, because that would be needed. Obviously, this component is there, you can check it, but we don't have a mapping yet. So usually here you would map it to the fields in the database. So let's go into the data and create a new data model. So data model could be food or whatever you like. I mean the name for the table. And now you should add some fields. If you don't know the fields, maybe you can go back to the design, and here you see that there is some kind of title, description, So let's go. What else is quantity? And then we have pickup time. And then we have location. And we have image URL or image. And now we should also set which property is required, definitely title. So let's set this required, description, maybe not, quantity, yes, this is required, definitely pickup time as well, required, location, required, image, required. So almost everything. I'm crazy. I want everything to be required. Okay, and we also could change the types. So for example, for quantity, that would be some kind of integer. Pickup time, I want to have a free string. Location, I don't know if there is something which AWS supports. Most probably not. We could create some custom types, so let's keep it as a string. Image, let's check if for the image we can use something which is URL. Yes, most definitely, yes. And that's it. So we could also, this was a visual editor, you could do this from some other editor and then just use a command line tool to push it. You could also right now inspect what was generated. So you see those fields which we selected are there. And currently it's allowed to the public. So this is not the best practice, but let's keep it right now as is. Maybe we'll cover this later or maybe in some other tutorial. Right now it's sufficient for our use case. So what you need to do next is save and deploy. What this will do is actually it will trigger CloudFormation, and basically what it will spin up is, I think, AppSync, and as well it will create a Dynamo DB table so that we can check. So if you want to see what is going around, you could type CloudFormation into the search, and there you should see the stacks or the automation which is currently in progress. For example, you see there are 2 stacks in progress. We can check what is going on here if we go into the details and basically checking the resources. So most probably something was created like GraphQL, okay, data store, and so on. So that is currently in progress still. Yeah, still this is not done. As it said that GraphQL is completed, so we could as well check in this AppSync. And obviously DynamoDB as well, because we know that some table will be created. And let's keep the CloudFormation to see what is going on. So AppSync, you see there is already some API, and DynamoDB currently, if we go to tables as well, here we have 1 table and 1 data store, which is great. So it's created for us by the automation of the whole Amplify stack. And now it's done. And there are some instructions what we can do, how we can use the data model and so on. So for example, if we choose the food, we could see what operations are there. Okay, but that is not important right now. So we have a data model. What we can do, it's a nice feature of Amplify, is if you go to the content, you could create either automatically the data or like specifying this data in this admin UI. So it is fetching the metadata, the tables from the backend. And you see we have one table. We can try to auto-generate a couple of rows. And voila, some rows are generated just like that. Or obviously you can create your own data here. So what did happen under the hood? This was pushing the data into the Amazon DynamoDB. So if you look there in the tables, DynamoDB tables, you should see some data. And how to do that? Explore table items. It's here. And this is basically the data store, which is for the purpose of the offline usage, but the real table is the food. And again, here you see your data, but as well some special columns which are added by Amplify. Okay, so that works. As well, we have generated GraphQL in AppSync, so we can check it. And obviously there are some samples and so on. We could check the schema to see if all of the fields are there. And you see quite a lot of was done automatically, which is great. So what else? Let's go back to the UI library. Let's go back to our food cart and let's configure this by configure. So what we want to configure is that we display the correct image. How to do that? Maybe we should first define a model. And the model would be our model, which is from database automatically discovered, which is food. And now for each of the item, we can configure its properties. So for example, for the image, obviously it would be some kind of a image, model image. Then from banana, which is I think the title, then we can set that this is associated to title. Then for the description, we can put description. For the quantity, we could put quantity, and nice feature is we can concatenate with some string. And for view details, we could add a link to the details. But this we can also do from the code. So right now we configure that, and because there will be a lot of food items, we can create a collection from that. Voila, the collection is created. So then we could configure how many items we want per page. We could add search, pagination, and stuff like that. Yeah, we could do a grid with same number of columns like we had in our demo, so 4. Come on. And we could, of course, configure a lot of stuff, yeah. Let's say that the page size is, I don't know, 10 or whatever, yeah. We can shuffle preview data, and we can apply sort conditions and whatever else. So now as we did that, we can again check what is the name. So we can import this into our application. And let's put it under the banner. Obviously we forgot the poll. So let's do the poll and let's check what was generated. Yeah, and after some time we had automatic generation, and we should see all of the items. Yeah, obviously those are fake items which were auto-generated, so you cannot see the real images, but when we add them, that would be then fine. So what else we can do? We can, style it a bit so it's not looking that awful. Adding some spaces, would be maybe nice. And stuff like that, but that you can use, I don't know, you can again use some class name and add some styling so it looks better. So something like that you could do. Yeah, and obviously that's a view mode. Yeah. If you would want to implement a view detail, right now this is not working. We need to check our other component, which is called food detail. And because we are building a single page application, we would like to navigate to the detail or display the detail only when we click on that. So or most of the examples which I've seen, they are doing that in just one class, and they are hiding or showing the detail or some other ones. Normally you would create additional classes or not classes or functions, whatever, and then use a router to route to that as single page. So I want also to show this kind of routing. So to continue with the React router, we should install it. So let's navigate to the official React router page. And there are some tutorials and so on. But basically what we need is to install the React router with npm, for example, npm install React router DOM. Let's try it. And we can also see if that was successful or not. If we navigate to the package.json, there should be some dependency. Yes, great. Worked. And what next? As next, we should, as per another tutorial in Amplify UI docs for components for the list, we should wrap router either inside our function app or even in the index. It's up to us. So let's do that, and we will use browser router for that. And obviously we need to use an import. And now we should move into the app.js, and we should specify our routes. So for example, let's do this here. Let's import the routes, and then for each one route, we should have an element as well. And let's say that we need like 3 routes. Why 3? I will explain in a moment. It is because we want the first route to create, second one to show details, and the third one would be a default to show some default stuff. And each route has a parameter, I think it's path, which starts with slash. And for example, the first one would be create food, second one could be food detail, and the last one could be exact slash, and that would be for the home or default. And each route would have then the element. An element would be something which we want to use or display when we navigate to this route. For example, for create, I think we have a component which is called edit food. So we can check the code. Yeah, and it's exactly edit food. So let's do the import for edit food. And we would basically display this component edit food here as a component. Then similar for the food detail. So let's add the food detail. And the last one would be element for the home page, or however you call it. And there we could wrap, for example, the banner and food car collection. Or you of course can create your own custom component and put those components inside this and call it a home component or something like that. Could be whatever naming you want. So now if we would like to test the router, we can test the router. We copy paste the path. Let's place it into the browser. Create food, navigation works. Main navigation works as well. Yeah, but obviously we want that the links are working or the buttons are working, or not just putting something in the browser. So let's continue with that. And for example, let's first modify the add food here and here. How to do that? So what we need is basically somehow trigger the navigation, and that you can do either from the Amplify UI. If you would go, for example, to the navbar and configure the add food component, you could set here, and into the action you could put slash and create food. Yeah, if you like, that's one option. Yeah, and we could go same what we already did here. Or we could do this programmatically. So the second option is on the add food button, and let's do this as well. On the banner, we as well have a button which we can use to navigate. And let's try it. So again, let's pull the changes and let's see if that works. Add food, yes. We went to add food. Cool. And before we continue with edit food, we should enable some more features like storage and security or authentication. So let's start with the authentication. There are multiple options like start from scratch or use Cognito's resources. We don't have Cognito, so let's start from scratch. And basically what we can do is, by default you have the email. You can add some another mechanism, but let's stick with the email. Within the attributes we could as well add something like a name, and we as well maybe would like to add I don't know, phone number. That's up to us. Right now, if we would have the email and the name, maybe it would be sufficient. So let's deploy it. And what it will do in the background, it would configure the Cognito. So we could as well check the logs and check what is happening if we would try to go to Cognito. We should see some changes there. And it should be under the Cognito identity pool. So let's go there. And you see that there is something newly created. And here we have instructions how to implement the application code. If we want to have our user sign in or sign up, or we could use the wrapper component, which we will use to simplify the stuff. So there are also some guides, and you can use the wrapper component like with the authenticator, which is the easiest way to start up. So let's copy paste this and let's put it here. But this will mean that the whole application is now secured, and you need to provide the user details to log in. There is no public part anymore. And obviously we can use this and add just for fun, and we will see what does it show. Obviously we need to do Amplify pool to pull the changes from the cloud. And when it starts, we will create a user. What else you could do with the authentication is you can go to the user management, and you could create, for example, groups like administrator, and add the users, or you can also manually create the users and stuff like this, and all of that would be propagated into the Cognito. So you can then check what was created. So the code was pulled, and if we start up the application, we have automatically generated cloud component for us. We should start with create user. So let's put Stefan. We should add some password. And let's create an account, and it should show us that it sent code. You will receive email with the code, so confirm code. And voila, now you are authenticated, and you would see the user ID here. But that is not so useful. So what you would normally like to have is either username or email, and then displayed here, for example, either instead of image, or maybe you would like to use a user profile, so we can change it, and maybe adding the sign out button here. So let's change this navbar. And we could, for example, change this. So it's not a user, simple user, but it would be a component or slot component. So let's change it in a way that it's a slot component. So let's go to navbar here. Let's configure it. And for some components, you can change it to slot components. For example, this user, we can convert to a slot. And after this, let's pull the code. And here we can override the navbar. So if we know the name, which was user, and it's a slot component. And inside the slot component, we can put whatever we want. So for example, we could place the code which we had here into the slot component, but we need to wrap it properly like this. Now it should be okay. Let's try it. Let's refresh it. Seems it was not rendered properly. Okay, the user is not recognized. I think because it should be in lowercase. And now it's good, yeah. So you need to keep the naming convention, and this we can change, and obviously maybe it's good to show what are the values. So let's put console log. What is inside the user? Because this is interesting, I think, to see. And inside the user, this is a Cognito user. So if we want to get some email, we could go to attributes. And what we want is either, maybe the name is better, or something like that. And without the hello. That looks nice, or? So now we see what user is authenticated. Great, that's one thing which we wanted to achieve. The second thing is, and because we wanted to enable as well the storage where we would upload the user images, the authentication was a prerequisite. So now we can continue with the next step, which is the storage. And basically, either we can import some existing bucket, or we can create a brand new bucket where we would upload our images. And we need to configure what is possible on this new bucket. So we can name a bucket or keep the originals. And for the sign in users, so for example, the users which are having the grants, we can add the upload view delete. Yeah, that makes sense. For guest users, just maybe view, because we want them that they will see the new images. And we need to deploy that. What it will do under the hood, it will leverage another service, which is S3. We can also check the logs. Of course, it needs to modify the security stuff like IAM policies, but basically it will create a S3 bucket. So if we would navigate to S3 inside the services, we should see something new being created for us. So the new bucket is created. It's called giveaway storage staging, and that is for the current staging environment. There are also instructions how to use it. So basically it depends on the level which you like, and based on the level you can use the storage, put something here for upload, download, and so on. And that's it. So this is configured, and as well we have a file browser where we could access all of our folders and so on, which is nice. So let me first show the changes which I did to the Figma design. Basically, as you see, some visual changes were made. I added a new image placeholder, so it looks a bit better. Maybe the button looks a bit better, maybe font here, and so on. but at the end we have a button which will be used to upload new image, and some fields like title, description, quantity, pickup time, and then later on location, buttons to save and cancel. Cancel will navigate us away from this page. So basically, when we would jump into the UI library and open the edit food component, we should see the same. Of course, we could configure everything here, but I decided that I will configure the component through the code. The only difference is that location is a slot component, so we will completely later on add the functionality here. And when we do the pull and pull all the changes, then all the code will be synchronized to the local environment, and maybe the components, UI components, would be updated. And I will show you how I did the implementation in the code or override of the standard stuff which was generated. So basically, first of all, I created a CreateFoodComponent because I wanted to move the code away. So it's a new component and it's here. And for that component, I wanted to pass some attributes. So basically, I want to pass the username, which will be then used by this component. So this is the way how you can pass components. And then in the component, you will read this from the props or property. So that's the one change which is there. And let's jump directly to the component. And the code got bigger. So what is important is when we are creating the component and we are building ourselves the whole form, we need to somehow store the variables, maybe initialize that and so on. So for that you can use state, but that's, you know, the decision which you want or doesn't want to use the state in this way. And for all of the fields I use simple states for title, description, quantity, pickup time, and as well at the end the image I use the state. Speciality here is that you see that some of them are having some initial values like empty strings, number 1 or the food. That's because I want to pre-initialize the form elements with some values. Then I will have some message which will be used, for example, for the error message, and then some boolean state which will show on display the error. What I'm adding here is as well notify toast, so a toaster message. So for that you need to go to the package, and I install the React Toastify for that as well. For the storage purposes, there is another dependency which is AWS Amplify storage, so you can usually install it easily. And let's go back to the component. So what I'm doing here is, and I will jump a bit from the code, and let me show the main component, which is obviously the edit food. And as said, you can override almost everything from this generated component. So I'm using the overrides, and I specified a special constant for that, which is called edit food overrides, which happens here. And here I'm trying to override almost each of important component, like the image, the buttons behavior. Then for all of the forms, I'm overriding the own chain, so I would get the value. So let's maybe start with the forms for elements. So let me jump in. So you see this is the form element title or form field, element, quantity, and so on. And let's jump into code. And in the code for this, because it's not configurable, and basically I need this to happen on the code level. When there is an on change of the field somebody is typing, I will catch this event, and when that's done, I will set title. The set title is obviously a state here, so we will modify the state with this set title. Similar for description, nothing else. And for quantity, I want to convert this to the number on the input side, on the HTML side, so I'm forcing the type number. So it is overriding this to number on the front end. So this way you can change it, because in Amplify UI you cannot change the field type to number, for example. And similar for the last field. What is special here is, and this is just one way how to implement this, you have upload image component, or you want to have this, which will display the image after you upload. Obviously it would upload this to the cloud, but as well you have some kind of a button. There are of course multiple implementations how you could do that. Maybe you would leverage the AWS Amplify file uploader, which is in description as well. The problem with that component is, okay, it's a nice component, obviously you can modify this and do a lot of customizations, which would be nice, yeah, if I could use that. But what I discovered is I would like to upload the images into the S3 bucket under either into separate buckets or in the same bucket with multiple folders, or my choice was in the same bucket with some prefix. But this component currently doesn't support the prefixes, so everything which you upload will be in the, for example, in the same public folder, but then all of the files would be overridden by a different user if they don't have some another name. So for that purpose, I couldn't use this component, and I was trying to craft something by myself. Therefore, in the design, we still have the button and the image. So what is under the hood for this component is that if somebody clicks on the upload button, there is a method handle click, and handle click method is basically using the standard functionality, which is as well here, but it's simply hidden because it's an input element of type file. It's hidden, but it has a reference, so we can reference it. It has some types which we can accept, and it has some on change event. So basically, if user clicks on the upload button, then we programmatically click into this special hidden element, and what will happen is that dialog will open and we can select only one. We didn't support the multi-select, and if the user clicks open, then the automatic upload will start. So there is this handler change file, and what will happen is we will check if there is some even from the component which was handling the file. If yes, what we will do, we will prefix the file name you provide when you select the file, but we will prefix the file name with the username, and username we will get from the app.js when we have the authenticator component, and there we will get the username. This is the strange user ID string, so this will be our prefix. We will concatenate this with the original name, which is fine, yeah, for one user. And then we will use the storage, which is a component again from AWS, and basically we will try to put the file. So first is file name, and then the whole file object, which we also receive into the handler. We can use some config where we can configure multiple stuff, but what I wanted to basically see by using the storage put is what will happen with the file. For example, in the console, I will log what is the progress, if there is some error, and what basically happened. what is not supported, this will not give you back some full URL with the long HTTP full exploded syntax that this URL will point you to the file. No, that will not happen. It will just send back the file name more or less. So what we will do is we will do another call with storage get with the same file name on the level public, because we, without specifying the details, it's automatically public, and we'll upload this into the public folder. We'll put some expiration, and basically when this happens, then we will receive the URL, and this URL we will use into our set image state. So that can be then used later on when we submit our whole form. So that is how this simple functionality works. Yeah, it will upload really the file. When we do a second call to get the file, we will get the URL, and therefore here to display the image, we are just using the state, because we are modifying as well the image properties, and the source of image is the image, which is the state URL, which is great for us. Then what we have is a cancel button, which is on the bottom of the screen, and cancel button, we just go away and navigate to the home page. Then we have a save button, and this is a interesting one. So what I implemented is I don't want to allow the save button if the values are not filled. So I'm having a check and disable the save button when there is nothing in the title or quantity is 0 and so on. You see that? Or if there is a default image, I want to force user to enter this. And if that is okay, the save button is enabled. User clicks on that. Then what I will want to do is to store the record into database via using a data store save method, because we are creating a new entry. And what we are crafting is a new food object with all of these elements like title, description, quantity, pickup time, and image. We will skip the location right now, because for that we will use some other component. Specialty here is for quantity, we are parsing from the string integer. And if this is saved correctly, we will go into this then, and basically after save, I will navigate to home page, but I will notify the user via a toast that the item was successfully saved. And if not, I want to error message variable into the set message, and we will set the is error message visible to true. With that, the error message should be displayed, because we have on the beginning something like that, which will display a red alert saying the error message. So that's more or less how it works. And a couple of code lines are needed for that, maybe more, because this is not a finished example, just something which we can leverage. And how it works is, let's click upload. Let's fill the fields. Apple, nice apple, quantity 10, pickup time, weekend, and you see save is enabled. I can save it. I'm being redirected, and you see as well the food item successfully created. User can see this. Here is the apple. Nice. Yeah, when you think okay, but it's too complicated. So there is as well some other way how to do that, by leveraging another component or another feature of Amplify UI library, which is called forms, where you can create your own form, or using the auto-generated form, which is auto-generated from the database. The problem is that the auto-generated form or this form designer has some limitations. I cannot like add the components which are not provided by the form. So for example, I would like to have the image here, or I would like to, for example, use the file uploader component there, but it's not possible to add it there via the designer. So that's kind of a limitation. Maybe for the maps, I would like to add then a map component and so on here. You know, so it is what it is. Yeah, for some scenarios, this is great because then you will get, you know, validations and a lot of styling. But for some use cases, this is not so extendable that you would like to use it. Therefore, I wanted to show you how to do this potentially the manual way, where you need to craft the code for all of the stuff what needs to happen under the hood. So what we didn't do yet is the location. And when we want to use the location, we should, I think, leverage the so-called geo what they have. So as well, Amplify UI provides a geo and kind of a map view. So we will use that. And for that, you could, you know, enable the geo via command line. And let's type it. Amplify art geo. And there are 3 questions. So let's try the first one. And let's generate the whatever map. And we want to authorize this and as the guest users because, you know, we want to have this authorized by everywhere. Yeah, and that I don't think we need. So let's generate that. And as they suggest, you need to do next steps. So Amplify push would push that into cloud. So similarly, like I enabled a map with Amplify Geo, now I used the second option for location service and basically place an index there. And via Amplify push, I pushed and generated the code. And now I basically have both map and location service. So it's possible now to craft the code. So let's go into the code. And I already did this. Basically, what I did first is I created custom component for CreateFoodComponent and placed all of the stuff there. But you've seen that. And if we would go into the custom component, there is something new. And that's it. What is new is basically that a location is using the special slot component. So basically we can add our custom code. This code consists of some view, which is having under this flags, which is trying to add some, you know, CSS behavior. We are adding one location label and then a geo component, which is called map view, which has an on-click handler. It has as well some initial state, which is in some Prague location. It has some styling, so it's not full screen or so large. Yes, we can fit into our design. And it also has a location search subcomponent, which position on the left. Let me show this. Yeah, I also did some other changes, but let me show this first. So if I click on the add foot, the component looks like this, and it's having the map. Yeah, so this comes from the geo, and it also has a search, and as well some on-click functionality, which I will show. So the asset, the initial map coordinates are specified here. There is some styling, there is some search possibility. When the user clicks on the map, what will happen is we will log basically what the event returns, but as well we will set the location which is in the event. Let's demonstrate. Let's press F12. So we have some console, and we can either click in the map or do some search. So let's try, for example, to search for CGI, and it will show us the location for that. And basically this is the location with very, very high zoom, so we can zoom out. And if we click, the click handler will work and it will show us all the elements which is possible. We are interested into the coordinates. So under this we will have a JSON object with two variables. Great. And then we can use it in our application. So let's try to do the full thing. Let's do the apple because I like it. Quantity, let's put 10. Pickup time, weekend. And if we save this, what will happen? It will be saved into the database. Here we have a nice information what is currently being done, and we as well have a option to delete and view. Delete I added because I was playing around and I would need to clean up the stuff, and view I also implemented because I wanted to implement like the view functionality so the user can view some details. Obviously somebody needs to enter this, but you see we will view the same details, the image, some title, description, quantity, pickup time, and the location is the same one which we selected. Yeah, maybe it's not obvious, because if we would zoom in or out, we would then see that that it is on the same location. Maybe it's not perfect. You maybe would like to have a marker, or maybe you would save the the name, the full name of this. Yeah, that's also possible. And let's jump into the code, or maybe let's jump first into the Figma, because there also I did some updates. So in the Figma design, I updated the components, so it has a map which is generated via some plugin. If you look into plugins, there is some plugin which you can install. It's called Map Maker, and if you use this plugin, you can generate this map and paste it into the Figma design. As well, here I modified a bit the design, and obviously it was synchronized to the UI library and then synchronized into the code. So let me also show some interesting pieces here. So from this point of view, we didn't do much else. I was just changing the database and adding the location property, which is not a simple string, but I chosen to use a special custom type, which is AWS JSON, and more or less is the JSON, so we can store the JSON there very easily. I will show you how. And it is basically in the stuff which was bind to the save button, and here we are using JSON stringify with the location which is as an object, and that makes a proper type at the end, and we can save it very easily. So that is for storing the location, handling the map, and map is obviously simple by using the native component of Amplify UI, which is a map view and location search. You can do this also in the different ways. I've seen a couple of tutorials doing this with the other React library, but that is, I think, much more simpler. So here you see initial value, some customization and stuff like that. What I also did for the view, so if we would navigate again for the view, it looks very, very similar, but the only difference is nothing is editable. So for a view, I again created a view component. What is different here is I had to update the food cart collection, and basically what I added is override for the items, and this means if the user will click on the view button, we will set the item which was clicked on into our variable food, and then we will navigate to the food detail. food detail has one property, which is food, and basically comes from our food. So if we navigate to the food detail function, it has our generated component from the UI and model from the properties food. It is using some overrides, for example, override to navigate to back button. It is using override of the components, which are a slot component for location. And again, we have a view, flex direction, and a map with some initial state. And initial state comes from our object, which was stored in the database. And basically, in our food objects, we have a location, and this location is JSON, so we can then go deeper into the properties, and we have longitude and latitude. And we also selected some default zoom because I was too lazy to figure out where in the map object the zoom is. And simple as that, we can basically display the map and guide the user where he would pick up the food. Obviously, this is not perfect. Maybe you would want to add some string address. Maybe you would add some feature to contact the user, or chat with the users and so on. But that is not the purpose of this demo. The purpose of the demo was to showcase Amplify UI and what it can do. So basically, we right now have add food and delete food and update food and so on, which that works nicely. You can also search and stuff like that. You could always do. What would be the next step is that you would normally want to deploy the things and host it. So before of that, I recommend to store everything into Git. Obviously, you can do the hosting stuff as well from something else, but I think it's better to go with proper Git code. So let's navigate to Amplify and let's see the options, what we have here. So currently we have just the backend environments and some services or features or categories which they say which were used. What we can do is, for example, close this environment and say that the next environment is prod, that we would maybe do as well, because it's interesting to see. And there is a difference between the staging areas or lower environments and prod environments in the way which Amplify services are being set up for you. For example, on the lower environments, your application is delivered from S3 bucket. On the prod environment, it also is using I think the CDN, which you would like to use because it would cache everything. So let's try this step by step. So what we can do is we can host this environment actually. And how to do that? We can start as easy, or we can do this like we would maybe really do in production. So we would connect the application via the GitHub, and basically I already did the setup, so I cannot repeat it, or I'm too lazy to do that. But if you connect this with your GitHub account and provide a repository, then this will do all of the other steps. Let me before commit all my stuff. And in the permissions, you would basically say which project you want. Save it and so on. And if it's correctly set up, you should see your project here, even if it's private. So that looks good. Let's pick next. And it should auto-detect all the frameworks. And you can obviously also select the backend environments, and we already have the backend environment. So let's pick ours. Let's pick the staging. And if we select this one, we would like to enable CI/CD, that will be completely automated. There are some commands which will be happening, so Obviously you can change it, but if not, let's keep all of the defaults and let's go next. So this is some summary, and let's click save and deploy, and all the magic should happen automatically. If something is going wrong, you will see some kind of error and you can dig into the logs. You could obviously check the services which are under the hood, like CloudFormation or CI/CD and so on. And if you are green, this means that all of it is done. You can click on the URL. And guess what? Will it work? Oh, you need to log in. So let's try it. Wow, looks great. And everything looks fine. So let's try to add some new foods. Let's add some banana. And it seems it doesn't work for maps. What is going on? Something simply doesn't work, but I will not spend time to do this. Let's save. And that works. So one thing which we see is not working is the map, most probably because there is some problem. Some function is not working simply, so you would need to debug it. But it's not a problem for us right now. Maybe it's about some security, or we didn't put correctly some check. Anyway, the deployment did work and we have an application. So if we would change the code, everything would be triggered again and it would be redeployed. So except we would fix our bug, what we can do next is we could, for example, and normally that's normal stuff is we could configure some branching strategy. We could, of course, clone the environment and create new environment for us. We could enable the pull request previews. For production, you would like to enable the performance mode. And yeah, what else you would normally want to do is you would most probably want to use a custom domain. What does it mean? That you will not use the generated one, but use yon, which you have in some other application, and basically you would want to add your custom domain. And basically it would offer you some guides, so you can continue with that. Yeah, that makes sense. And then obviously there will be some other steps which you need to do. And basically the next step is to verify that you are the owner. So you need to create a CNAME. When you correctly set up the domain management, basically all the entries into your custom domain, then this screen will show you that the status is available, the certificate will be generated, and so on. If you don't know how, you should go to the actions and view DNS records. That would show you what stuff you should add there if you don't did it correctly. So first of all, you should go to your domain entries and add a verification CNAME, which should be in format like this. So for first value is this, which comes into the host. Don't add a dot at the end. And the second one is the answer. Also don't add a dot at the end. What also is needed, that you add a name and CNAME. This looks similar. There is just one exception, that the a name, is having the answer which was recommended, but the CNAME has a www as a host if you enter this. And after some time, this should refresh, and the AWS would find this and can check the domain. It will set up everything for you. So when you basically enter your domain name, it will be redirectly to the correct servers. Most probably CDN will be the first, and you can log in. And then the documentation on the, for example, the various components like this, which is on the React, obviously for other components as well. Then you have Amplify block. Where they usually serve the latest news and posts. Then the latest news and posts are as well discussed on the Amplify Discord channel. So you can try to check it as well. And as well, usually the updates are on Twitter. So new versions or new features. What we didn't cover in this video, and those are other features which you could play around or need in the future, are, for example, the functions. Those are basically backed by Lambda functions. Then you can use directly GraphQL API or REST API, or for example analytics if you are interested what the users are doing on the front end, and predictions, interactions, notifications. Yeah. So that's another features which you maybe could explore. One feature which I forgot to mention is customization of the stuff which was generated by Amplify. And when you need it, it's the times when the generator doesn't do what you really want. So for example, we had this issue in the code where we are trying to upload basically a file to the bucket, to the public bucket, but you know, after the upload, I already modified the code, so it's fixed. But what I observe is that when you use the standard stuff and you upload the file into the bucket, into the public bucket, it's still not behaving like a public one, so it's not readable by the public users. And how to make this properly public is you need to set up the ACL public read, which will still not work, but you still need to customize the ACL in the Terraform template somehow, and we will show how. And basically then as well we will use some hack when we then again get the file via storage get. It again would give us the pre-signed URL, which we don't want. So we can strip this URL and basically get only the portion which is public and forget about the other, you know, parts of the URL, and then save this, and then we have a public URL. To make this work, we would need to use customization. Because why? And how to do that? It's via the Amplify override storage. And that would basically mean for us, if we would go into the Amplify backend code, there is a storage, and the storage normally has, you know, some inputs and builds. It will also ask you how you want to, you know, open the file, because what it will create is a override TS. And basically after the editation, if I'm done with my changes, I would click enter, and it will generate or update the CloudFormation template. So in this file, what I had specified is, and I was googling a bit, and what I wanted is to override this public policy. So I found some snapshot in the official documentation, and I just wanted to basically allow except of the get object as well the put object ACL, which is then needed to on the front-end side to use this public read ACL. So basically, here in the override, I'm specifying this is the most important stuff, and then the resource name, which is basically a concatenation of the standard prefix for the S3, then the bucket name, which we already have because it's this is variable, and then for the public. Generally, I took the inspiration from the standard policy, which is like that, but in our case, you cannot use the principle, and you have to craft your own, bucket by concatenation. After this is applied, what will be generated in the CloudFormation template is, if you search for the correct row, you would see that this is the standard code which is generated, but as well you would see our code which starts here. It is allow our actions, and as well it will craft some concatenations of the buckets and so on, but that is not so important, and for the public. So basically this way, via the override, you can influence how the code would be generated for CloudFormation. Obviously after the Amplify push, all of this will be executed and changes to the ACL will be done. And that is what we need to have. Yeah. Other way how you can do this is not via this override, but you can also influence the CloudFormation, importing some other resources and so on. But that was the trick which we needed to do to basically allow us to make the bucket public for our use case. This is for our use case. Maybe you will not need it, but I also wanted to show you how you can influence the generation of the Terraform, and maybe you will need some special hacks to the already generated artifacts. Yeah, so that's the way how to do that. But obviously you need then to look into the CDK, what are the objects, classes there, and how to influence the generation. But that's the way how you can do this. Okay, and now let me speak about some disadvantages, which I think they are, or maybe of course they will change in the future. So first of all is kind of a synchronization issues which you can get either by synchronizing between the Figma and the Amplify UI, or by synchronizing the Amplify UI code into your local code. And that happened for me a lot of times, which is not great. Yeah. So sometimes I was basically deleting the code locally. Sometimes I was deleting the entire project in Amplify to solve the issues, because there was basically a dead end. I couldn't move. So that can happen. Yeah, be ready for that, because it's just a generator, and they cannot cover all the use cases you have or edge cases. Then the responsiveness, they claim it's 100%. You can customize everything and it will be pixel perfect and responsive and so on. Okay, but that is only into a certain degree. You can still use something which they don't support, and it happened to me a couple of times that it was not pixel perfect. Of course, it could be an issue that I was creating the design wrongly. Yeah, could be, but just count with that it could be that if you use, I don't know, some special styles, it will be not translated one-to-one into your code as you wish to. Then the support for the automated collection or grid from the UI is not that perfect. Yeah, you can customize the stuff, but then at the end, you need to tweak it in the code to really go for the 100% grid layout which you want. Then maybe some problems which can occur is the concept of the variance, where you are designing for the responsive concept of the breakpoints, like small, medium or large screens. And then the restriction by the variance is that they exactly need to have the same number of items in the Figma same naming and so on. Yeah, that is a complication in some cases. Then you cannot go with the variant, but you need to create a complete component. Other than that, what I think is a disadvantage is that it's there should be more primitive components, yeah, which can be auto-generated into the Amplify UI code. Then what I observed is that all the resources, if you, for example, delete the project or a stage in the project, sometimes they are kept. Yeah, they are not always deleted automatically. So I was a couple of times deleting them manually in the AWS console. Sometimes as well, how the model is used in the GraphQL, and the auto generator is then generating, for example, the DynamoDB tables, and you need to use relations. Sometimes it's not a good concept. Maybe there should be also a support for the single table design, which is not there. So that could be an issue or disadvantage. So far, the Amplify team didn't create native components for other like frameworks like Angular, Vue, and so on. There was some announcement that they will do this, but so far it's not there. And disadvantage could be also pricing, yeah, because with Amplify you are being forced to use some kind of a model, some concepts, and at the end you would have a lot of services running. So you should also think if that's the way how you want to design this on the AWS, because more components will cost you more, of course. And maybe another disadvantage is, or maybe not, for real prod app you would need to probably customize a lot. Of course they have a concept of overrides, that's nice, yeah, or slots, that's also nice, but still you need to think about the Amplify and what they show as really for basic examples which they show, but for the prod like app you would customize a lot. Themes, CSS, overrides for how the component should behave. Maybe you would create your own components, and so on and so on. And the last one in my list is Figma, and what will happen to Figma if there will be some problems with that in future, because it was bought by Adobe and we don't know what will happen. And that's all for the disadvantages. Couple of points, yeah, maybe those are not really disadvantages, but right now I see it like that. For the summary, I can recommend AWS Amplify if you have some project which you want to build on the cloud and you don't want to waste time with the infrastructure and complex setup, and you just want to be productive and you want to use as much as managed service from AWS, then a very good choice, because you will be fast in development, but of course you will need to customize it. You will need to learn the concepts which they want you to use, and so on. Yeah, maybe it would be not the pixel perfect, but almost pixel perfect concept or design, which will be automatically converted into code, which is nice. Yeah, and of course there is a lot of services which are integrated with Amplify, which is as well very, very great. So overall, I think go for it, try it, and maybe it's time to build your next project, some real prod application with Amplify. What I suggest is try, build, ship, and let the users decide if this makes sense or not. Other than that, I would like to thank you for watching this video. Let me know if you liked it. Click on the like button, subscribe, and watch my videos on the channel. Yeah, thank you. Bye.